Hello Instafam, it is Dr. T here coming to you. It is Wednesday night and it is school holidays in my part of the world, and I've snuck away for a little break actually. So yes, Wednesday night, live Q&A. I am keen for you to drop any questions that you have into the comments below. Remember that it isn't personalised medical advice. So if you do have something that is very personal, you don't need to share your whole life story. I'll be giving very generic answers, but I would highly encourage you to go back to your GP or your fertility specialist to discuss your specific case further. And as I have said before, everything that I share here is evidence-based, because I am an obstetrician gynecologist and board certified reproductive endocrinology and infertility specialist. And so what I know is evidence-based medicine. So yes, if you have any quick questions that you would like to drop into the comments, now is your opportunity. I have to give a big shout out to Peter from the Women's Health Education Network, or WEN, who is part of an amazing educational network based down in Tasmania, but all around holistic women's health. And when I talk about holistic women's health, what Peter and her organisation are creating is an abundance of resources for women around how their bodies cope with different things. So whether it be coping with a pregnancy or even with a pregnancy loss, whether it be coping with menopause, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, a whole heap of things. And she has amassed a bunch of experts, from neurologists to exercise physiologists to dietitians to gynecologists, all presenting their perspectives on the holistic way that a woman's body changes during these moments, which I think is just magnificent, because it is a really evidence-free area. There's not a lot of research being done in women in these spaces, and I really think what she is creating for women as far as an educational network is fabulous. So I have already seen that some questions have been dropped into the comment section. Before I start, I just want to give you guys a heads up. I came up with an idea today while I was sitting out on my balcony with a little cuppa, enjoying the sunshine, in between dealing with children. I came up with this idea that I would share with you over the next 10 weeks some of my top tips for getting through the perimenopause. I know. There's lots of self-prescribed experts out there on how to navigate that menopause, perimenopause journey. But I've got to tell you that as someone who is a survivor of cancer being thrust into the perimenopause, it's quite traumatic. And so I can totally resonate with all of my patients and the traumatic journeys that they have taken. But that doesn't mean I'm going to succumb to it. And as somebody who can no longer take any hormones, I have had to try and feel my way around the things to manage some of the symptoms and side effects. So I'm currently on this 12-week journey to rediscovering myself. And over the next 10 weeks of that, so I'm 2 weeks down, I'm going to be sharing with you every Friday just some top tips. Not very much, just a couple of minutes worth on navigating or managing that menopause journey. So if you know of anybody, it might not be you, but if you know of anybody who you think would really benefit from hearing some of the top tips that I am instituting, and these are all based on evidence. This isn't just me trialing stuff out. This is all based on the stuff that I've been reading about how to manage the menopause, particularly in the context of cancer and not being able to use hormones. Make sure that you tag them and have them follow me, because every Friday over the next 10 weeks, I'm going to be sharing some information. Now, I've had about, let's have a look, 3 or 4 questions that have been posed. Let me just scroll back. Hello. Lovely to have you guys on board. Right, all the usuals. Lovely to see you on. Okay. G. Marwick, what are your thoughts on bromelain as a supplement? Well, bromelain is actually in pineapple, would you believe? And pineapple is certainly the fruit of fertility as far as its association with improving fertility. Whether it's the bromelain or whether it's just the multi-nutrients in pineapple, I'm not sure. But it's an incredibly important nutrient. Is it the nutrient? Do I think you need to supplement bromelain? No, I don't. I think if you include an optimal amounts of fruits and vegetables in your diet, 2 pieces of fruit, 5 serves of vegetables on a daily basis, you are probably going to be getting the optimal amount of nutrients, including bromelain, into your diet. So that's my thoughts. And if you do a lot of research in this area, you'll soon realize that the optimal type of diet for fertility, but also for many other sort of health conditions like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, blah, 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 then you'll see that a Mediterranean style diet is the best one to follow. And funny that, it includes an abundance of fruits and vegetables. So that's my thinking on bromelain as a supplement. All right, good question. Had me thinking for a second there. Laura Jane, 89. Any research about extending folic acid folate past the 12 to 13 week mark if you had the early anatomy stand to confirm no spina bifida? Great question. So you're absolutely right that the research around folic acid is around the prevention of neural tube defects. And so when you look back at the research from the 80s that looked at the inclusion of folic acid, they were really using the biomarker of neural tube development, which is in that first trimester. So you've then got to question whether or not you need to continue folic acid throughout the pregnancy. And I'm not convinced that that research has been done. However, let's look at the biological plausibility of this. Folic acid is really important as part of that DNA synthesis process. And you are growing a human body. And so you need that folic acid to continue to help the DNA synthesis process as you're growing a human. So if you are not optimizing your folate or folic acid, well, it would be folate through your diet with an abundance of green leafy vegetables, then it's not unreasonable to continue to supplement. But the true benefit is in the prevention of neural tube defects, and that benefit is kind of done and dusted by the first trimester. So it may be beneficial. I wouldn't think that it would be a waste. I don't necessarily think more is better, but the greatest benefit is in the first trimester. Good question. Right, Mrs. English Lady, lovely to have you on here. Is 19 follicles too many for a planned fresh transfer for IVF? Too much? Okay. Difficult to answer that question because just because you have 19 follicles doesn't mean they're all of the optimal size, right? So we know that a follicle over about 14 millimeters has an increased likelihood of producing a mature oocyte. The OHSS risk comes from the VEGF, which is released from the follicles and can be released from the smaller follicles with that surge that happens when you give someone a trigger injection. And so if you've got lots and lots and lots of little ones, it will give you a high estradiol, and that estradiol is your biomarker to suggest that you are going to produce an abundance of VEGF. You might not necessarily mean that you're going to get 19 mature eggs out of all of those follicles. So that's why we kind of look at both. We look at what your estradiol levels are like on the day of trigger, as a biomarker for risk for OHSS. And then we also look at the number of follicles in total, but also the number of mature oocytes that are collected. Do I think that 19 is too many for a fresh transfer? Well, I guess it depends how big the smaller ones are and also what your relative estradiol level is. They're the sorts of things that would help me decide whether or not to have a fresh transfer. Good question. Natty 2. Hello. When you see 12 follicles on a pre-egg collection scan, is it possible a specialist will not see all of these during the actual procedure? Again, it depends on who's doing the scan and what size the follicles are. So if you're talking about 12 follicles over 14 mils, I would expect that you would be able to see all of those on at an egg pickup, unless perhaps you had ovulated, in which case you should see a lot of free fluid in the pelvis. And you might have seen a progesterone rise or even an LH surge on your pre-trigger bloods. Difficult question to answer, as I'm trying to think of the clinical scenario you might be thinking of. I guess, could it be that the person doing the egg collection might not see all the follicles? I suppose if yes, it had been incorrectly measured. So it's important to know where the scan was done, the level of experience of this person doing the ultrasound, what they were measuring. Were they measuring follicles, or were they perhaps measuring things like Nabothian cysts, which can be of a size and sit around where the ovaries sit? Lots of different factors could impact on that natty tube. So just a little bit of food for thought there for you. Bathina Berry. I know there's a better way of saying that. Hi there, just joined. Please, can you do a chat on hCG level tracking? So many women online going crazy trying to read. I know. Look, you've asked the question, what are the rules? There are no real rules around. Well, I suppose there are some real rules. The ranges of hCG at each week of gestation is wide. Like, think of that. So if you're at, 6 weeks and 3 days, and your hCG is different to someone else at 6 weeks and 3 days, that is okay, because you all sit within a range. So what is important is to see the rise, right? So from week 4 to week 5, you should see a doubling. From week 5 to week 6, you should see a doubling. Let me start again. From week 4 to week 5, you should see a 10-fold increase. That's what I meant to say. And then from week 5 to week 6, you should see a 10-fold increase. From week 6 to week 7, it will go up by not quite 10-fold. So somewhere between maybe 5-fold, half of that, and a little bit more. It's also important to look at the progesterone levels, and sort of important to look at the estrogen levels. So are they continuing to track and stable, or are they falling off? All of those bloods together create a profile, and it's really important to look at all of those and then put it into context with any clinical symptoms that somebody might be experiencing as well. So can you guys out there confidently track yourselves? My belief is no. My belief is that there is so much information out there, and there is such wide ranges and such individuality to this that you're going to do your head in by trying to figure out, do you fit the rules or do you not? And so I would always suggest that you connect in with a fertility centre who is well experienced in early pregnancy tracking to help you along this process. Doing it yourself, hard work and extremely anxiety provoking. All right, any other questions or thoughts? They came thick and fast, and then there was a little bit of silence going on there. I'll see if there's anything more coming through. I actually would like to ask you guys some questions. I would love to know the sorts of questions that you guys have around pregnancy loss, so miscarriage in the first trimester, because I'd like to create some content, some short videos that I can share with you. And I'd also like to know the questions that you have around specific aspects of the IVF journey. Do you have specific questions around the stimulation, specific questions around the egg collection, questions around the embryology, or even questions around the transfer? So if you have any questions around those two things, the IVF journey, but also early pregnancy loss, I would love for you to share them. Send me a DM, shoot me a comment. I'm going to start creating some reels that I think will be really, really helpful. Oh, good. A few more questions have come through. Natty Chu, you again. Can you explain what role of calcium plays with fertilization and eggs? It helps with activation. And so that activation process, it kind of induces a cascade of events within the egg that not only allows the sperm to enter, but also sets up a force field to prevent any other of the sperm from entering and enables capacitation. So it's hard to explain other than to say to you that it is one of the steps that helps with that cascade towards the sperm fertilizing the egg. Some people, it is naturally there. Some people require extra in order to encourage the egg to allow fertilization by the sperm. Mrs. English, what is the difference between ganirelix as an antagonist compared to orgalutran? Why is ganirelix injection not a pen like gonal F? They hurt so much. Oh gosh. Look, this is really good advice to the producers of these drugs. So orgalutran and ganirelix are both the same medications, but they are produced by different companies. So therefore, different companies have different ways of administering drugs. So to be honest, I think the best advice is to speak to your nurse because, and I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but I actually think that it's the nurses who have all the excellent techniques for ensuring that we do as least harm as possible with injections. So speak to your fertility nurse. And you know what? My Groodle is trying to bash down the door. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to continue on with my school holidays. In fact, it's actually back to work for me tomorrow. So I will come to you next week, hoping that you guys will throw some questions through that I can start to address in some reels. And look out this Friday for Tamara's top tips to managing the menopause. Week 1 out of 10. I'll see you there. Bye.